I wasn't expecting those pictures and photographs, but thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Reddy. Um, yeah, I was just also wondering this light if it's going to show my bald spots, but looks like it isn't. Thank you. Dr. Nageshwar Reddy Garu, to all the friends in the gathering, distinguished audience from various parts of India and I think some other parts of the world as well, to my friends from media. Firstly, before I go into my formal speech, let me place on record my gratitude, my sincere appreciation for toward Dr. Nageshwar Reddy Garu. And whenever I say something, I actually mean it from the bottom of my heart. I am not saying this because he's invited me. This is the first time I'm at AIG, not as a patient but as a guest. So I have to ensure that I say a few words which I truly mean. Firstly, I know Dr. Reddy as one of the most eminent gastroenterologists, endoscopists in the world. He's one of the most renowned. In fact, I've had a couple of chief ministers, I'm not naming names, I've had a couple of chief ministers call me seeking his time, saying, listen, I have a patient who needs this time, so please, why don't you get me Dr. Reddy's appointment, and please ensure that my patient, my attendant, my person, my family member is taken good care of. So I told that Honorable Chief Minister that you should not worry about that at all. You know, Dr. Reddy treats everybody equally. And when I say this, I say it with utmost sincerity because I remember when COVID hit us, it was an unprecedented crisis for the governments, for hospitals, for the medical fraternity, for people at large, for humanity at large, for the world at large. And one of the outstanding hospitals in Hyderabad that shone like nobody else is AIG under Dr. Reddy. And I say this because I remember very well. I'm very active on social media. I used to, because that was a time where you couldn't go out, where you couldn't meet people in person. So I was trying my best to ensure that we respond to people's concerns, to their grievances, to ensure that their voices are heard, or at least understand what's going on in the world. Because during COVID, I think most of the doctors here would agree with me. During COVID, everybody became a doctor. Everybody knew everything. Everybody was reading up. Everybody was looking up. Everybody was asking their doctors what a steroid would do, or what in fact, even all the politicians started speaking, uttering all the complicated words, all the complicated medicines, Even we started calling up pharmaceutical companies and saying, when are you going to give me the remdesivir that otherwise I would have never in my life ever pronounced remdesivir, right? So during COVID, the reason why I say AIG shone like nobody else is because I remember very well when the rest of Hyderabad, I don't want to name names, was charging exorbitant amounts, rest of Hyderabad's hospitals were charging exorbitant amounts. Dr. Reddy, without a question, I think led by example and ensured that patients were not exploited, and that shows the hallmark of a great leader. My compliments to you, sir. My compliments to you on that. And secondly, I was here for a couple of days recently. I stayed overnight actually. Of course, Dr. Reddy takes a lot of pride in this facility. He gave me a tour very kindly, took time out, gave me a tour of the place, showed me what all he has done and what all in fact he's imbibed, some of the best practices from across the world. He was taking great pride in telling me how he kind of decongested his reception area, and he ensured that the people's flow, almost 5, 6, 7,000 people, how they could be accommodated at the ground, at the lower ground, at the upper ground levels, and how neatly they were done. The travelators inside the hospital, etc., are one of its kind. But what impressed me the most was not the travelators, was not how beautifully it is designed, not even how many plants he's gotten for so many other parts of the world, none of that. What impressed me the most was, one day he walks in at 11:30 p.m. in the night, and he was basically giving me advice and telling me, what needs to be done, etc., etc. Next morning at 6:30, once again he's back in the hospital. I said, did you get some sleep? He said, yeah, I need 3 hours of sleep. I said, okay, you have to tell me what you're drinking, what you're eating, because I need that too. Because if you're able to sustain a long day with 3 hours of sleep, I think that's astounding. The work ethic of this man, Dr. Nageshwar Reddy, is something that the world can certainly learn from, imbibe from. My compliments to you, sir. pulling 16, 17-hour day. And I think the theme of this session is not only women in medicine, but work-life balance or something. I'm guessing you don't have much of a work-life balance, sir. I think you work all the time. And I think kudos to you for your work ethic and for what you've built here. And the third thing, and I'll leave it at this because otherwise it will sound like this is a mutual admiration society. But the third thing I'll tell you, he told me, one of the richest businessmen in India had visited this hospital privately. He was here, I don't want to name names. He took a tour of the place. He was supposed to stay for 1 hour. He ended up staying for 4 hours. And end of the entire tour, he offers Dr. Reddy a check. He says, this is far more impressive than I thought it was. I'm going to write a check to you, a few thousand crores. And Dr. Reddy refused it flat. He said, I haven't built this for commercial purposes. I've built this facility to ensure that research and development happens. I have not built this with a profit motive. So therefore, my kudos to you, sir, on building a world-class facility in our city, in Hyderabad. And I'm also told that Newsweek has rated you as one, and they say this entire facility as one among the best gastroentero facilities in the world. Top 3, I think it is. So my compliments to the entire family of AIG, because it can't be just one man doing it, it's the entire team. So my compliments. Now, of course, I'm extremely pleased to be here. When he asked me a month ago, I said I'd absolutely be here. And I've cancelled one meeting to be here, sir, I have to tell you that. Because it was getting too much. There's like 5 events and I had to cancel one. But I'm glad to be here. But then I was asking myself, neither am I a woman nor am I in medicine. So what am I doing here? So I asked him, I said, what am I doing here? What am I supposed to speak? He simply said, give us an outsider's perspective on what needs to be done, what possibly, we can't see. When you're inside the profession, if you're a doctor or even if you're a woman, you probably end up, with a tunnel vision. So probably giving an outsider's perspective and trying to give you a sense of what I think is happening across the world is what I would love to do today. Medicine has always been looked up to as one of the noblest professions across the world. In fact, even today when I speak to my daughter, who's 13, and when I ask her, what is it that you want to do? I think many fathers, many parents, in fact, in India especially, have had this, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, I've had this thing, where you want your son to be an engineer and your daughter to be a doctor. I think that is how it has been. But my mother, I have to tell you, a little story, an anecdotal one. My mother always wanted me to be a doctor. She was insisting, she was actually very passionate about it. She's always said, there isn't a single doctor in the family. You should actually become a doctor. I ended up taking biology. I eventually ended up as a biotechnologist. That's a different story. Back in 91, when I was in my +2, I studied reasonably well. I don't think I'm a top of the class student, but I was a above average student, let me put it that way. And back in that day, we had MSET. Now I think it's NEET. Back in that day, it was MSET. So right after I finished my +2, I only could garner a 1600 rank. I wasn't one of those top students who could get into the top 100 or 200. So I ended up getting only B Pharmacy, and I could have possibly gotten agriculture or something. I didn't want to do that. Then I actually went to Karnataka, took that entrance test. Now what happened is, of course, in Karnataka, there were many more medical colleges. The private medical college system was far more robust. So I got in there. In fact, I got in some of the best colleges in Karnataka. But my father is a very persuasive man. He can convince you, to basically do anything he wants. Right? So when I came and told him that I got through this entrance test in Karnataka and I'm going to join medicine in Karnataka, he told me, do you know how many years a doctor kind of takes to settle into life? I said, I have no clue. My mom wanted me to be a doctor, so I'm going to be a doctor. He said, you'll be 32 or 33 by the time you complete your graduation, post-graduation, super specialization, and a bunch of other things. And then for the rest of your life, you could be called at 12 in the midnight, for an emergency, and you'll have to run. So there won't be much of a work-life balance. He kind of basically stressed me out by saying all that. I said, okay, if that is the case, I'm not doing it. I'd rather do something else. So that's how I ended up not being a doctor, is where I'm going with this. But I do believe sincerely, because each and every time some family member of mine had an emergency, the kind of admiration, the kind of respect in that movement, in that moment, any person would have toward the doctor that treats you is something that is unquantifiable, immeasurable, and that kind of gratitude, that kind of amazement with which we look at you, all the people engaged in this noble profession, is that cannot be summed up in words. So my compliments to you, because these are all intangibles. Now I am the Minister of Municipal Administration. I keep telling my team, that अगर हैदराबाद को हम लोग हर दिन साफ रखते हैं, हर दिन अगर साफ सुथरा रखते हैं, कोई हमें कॉम्प्लीमेंट नहीं देता है, कोई भी हमें तारीफ नहीं करता है.